The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
The opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes masks.
And if they don't have any money, they get in free. So this idea is a bunch of malarkey, what we're talking about here.
So the first thing that I'm going to do when I'm president is I'm going to Clorox the Oval Office.
Is that the bills that the future president here, that the senator is talking about.
Well, first of all, I'm grateful that he endorsed my presidency already, but I'll tell you this. There's a saying in my community, you're dipping into the Kool-Aid and you don't even know the flavor. You need to come to the city of Newark.
When it came down to it, they didn't go after me there because I didn't do anything wrong. Conversely, if Mitch McConnell is the one that lets him off the hook, we're going to be able to say, well, sure, they impeached him in the House,
Castro,
but his friend Mitch McConnell, Moscow Mitch, let him off the hook.
Senator Bennett, please respond.
Your response, sir?
Yes.
That's it?
No, he said, would I insist that labor be engaged? The answer is yes.
I consider that a victory.
Well, I love your affection for me. You spent a lot of time with me.
So those were the best one-liners of the night. Do we really have to hear the word malarkey anymore? What is with the jazz age terminology? What is with that? You know, when he first shook hands with Kamala Harris, I thought, oh, this is going to be nice. This will be, amicable. You know, he goes,
Go easy on me, kid.
Go easy on me, kid.
You good?
Go easy on me, kid. You got a lot of moxie. I mean, what is with the jazz era? I don't even understand. I really, listen, all that was missing was turning to Kirsten Gillibrand and saying, "What a dame." Do you know what I mean? I don't understand. But I will say this: if Biden gets the nomination, I will buy a, that's a bunch of malarkey T-shirt. I will make that's a bunch of malarkey T-shirts. Okay, and we will wear. That's a bunch of malarkey T-shirts. Now, on the other hand, if Cory Booker gets the nomination, we're all going to be wearing, big red Kool-Aid boy. We're all going to be wearing that one. I mean, it's just like, but I have to say, night one was so much better than night two. Last night, listen, Democrats, I always say that if you're going to get in a circle like that, make sure you bring the tissues and the Lubriderm, all right? Because this doesn't serve anybody but yourself, this kind of arguing. I mean, final rule, never say anything that sounds like the kind of thing Ronald Reagan would have said in 1984. Malarkey, you got a lot of moxie, kid. You know what I mean? It's just, stop it. Hey, that dame over there, she's a real bear cat. Look at those games. Stop it. Stop it. But I have to say, Cory Booker portrayed Joe Biden as if he were Jeffrey Epstein. Do you know what I mean? This whole thing, I swear to God, while Biden didn't seem very prepared for all the incoming, which was endless. It was freaking endless. He needed to be Sonny Chiba last night. He took a beating last night that made Alabama Worley look stupid. Do you know what I'm saying? Are you a Tarantino fan? Then you get that. If you're not, Scorsese, it was a garbage can beating is what it was. He was Sonny, and everybody else was, Biden was Carlo, and everybody else was Sonny. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was really, and you know what they're saying about Biden today? He was brilliantly adequate. That is not what it's going to take to stand on a stage with the Trump, okay? It just isn't. Trump's going to turn around, he's going to call him Sleepy Joe, and Joe's going to stand there and say, that's a bunch of malarkey. But you're married to a really, look at that dame you're married to. Look at the gams on her. Really? I can't do it. But if it is Biden, we're going to vote for him, right? Right, everybody? You're going to go for that? You're going to do it. You're going to do it, right? Right? Because you fall in love during the primary and then you fall in line during the general. That is the way it has to be. These are the rules. And I just want the other candidates to realize that eventually you may be out on the stump working for that person that you trashed, that you trashed last night, or vice versa. Either way, you're making it hard for yourself. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you understand? Here's a handy little toolkit for the next debate, September 12th and 13th in Houston, if we have 2 nights. We may be down. I get what happened last night, okay? And I hope you do too. What happened last night was every man for himself. That's why, they sat in a circle like that. They did that. They tried to say, it's just, I'm the one. I'm the one. I don't care about you. I don't care about you. But that was because the next debate has a threshold that only 7 of the candidates have met. And so everyone was trying to fundraise last night. Everybody was trying to have a moment last night. Everybody was trying to say, go with me. I can, do this for you. You're going to feel so good with me. Everybody was trying really, really stinking hard to get their fundraising up, to get their polling up. And the sad truth is that only 7 of them have met the threshold of 130,000 unique donors. Not the number of times you give, but that you gave. 130,000 people have to individually give something to each and every candidate in order for those candidates to qualify, and at least 2% in a majority of the polls. Now, a lot of them are at 0, a lot of them are at 1, and they were trying their very level best last night to get it up, okay? You understand what I'm saying? I think you do. Okay, so what they really need to do is say, Trump bad, me good. Repeat. And instead of realizing, one of the things about doing stuff publicly is know your audience, right? Know your audience. You know where they were? Does anybody remember where they were? Where were they? Where were they? Detroit. They were in Detroit. And there was no conversation about plants closing. There was no conversation. The only one that even mentioned that they're pointing at each other when the truth, of job, desecration is happening from on high. That AI is, if you go into a factory, you're not going to see immigrants on the line. You're going to see robots on the line. The only person that had his brain wrapped around that was Andrew Yang, right? But other than that, there was no conversation about the coming technology wars. There was no conversation about why people are losing their jobs. There was no conversation about, hey, don't point at me, don't blame each other. You have to look up. That's where the trouble is coming from. Nothing at all about agriculture. Donald Trump just doubled down on the trade war with China. He just put another $300 billion worth of tariffs on. I mean, nothing about farmers, nothing about the heartland, nothing about the lead in the water. They're all trying to figure out like what the cause of crime is. And none of them have figured out that lead in the water of young children, which is an epidemic in this country. The only one that seems to know this is Marianne Williamson, God love her, right? But, and Elizabeth Warren, she understands what economic terrorism is. She understands what environmental terrorism is. She said so. She understood it. But other than that, last night, did anybody bring that up? Did anybody talk about the fact that lead and children don't mix? That lead and children cause learning disabilities? That, they did actually go deep enough to figure out that kids that don't graduate high school end up in trouble more often than kids that do graduate high school. They realized that. But they never, ever got deep. And they were standing there in Detroit. Where the lead conversation would have gone over. It would have made sense. Just explain to people instead of trashing each other. That was unforgivable, I have to say. And, we have to invest in education. Well, you know what? You can't educate a kid that has a learning disability due to lead, okay? You got to get the lead out of their system. And then they're going to need attention to catch up. Otherwise, they end up super frustrated and very angry. And this leads to crime. I mean, it's just like, this is 2019. We're ready to have these conversations. And all they did, and why couldn't they just talk about that? Why couldn't they just talk about Trump? It's all anybody else on the planet talks about. And they're taking shots at each other. I'm weeping over here.
At RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
unfortunately, Vice President Biden, you're just simply inaccurate in what you're describing. The reality is that our plan will bring health care to all Americans under a Medicare for All system. Our plan will allow people to start signing up on the first day. Babies will be born into our plan, and right now 4 million babies almost are born every day in America, or every year in America. Under our plan, we will ensure that everyone has access to health care. Your plan, by contrast, leaves out almost 10 million Americans. So I think that you should really think about what you're saying, but be reflective and understand that the people of America want access to health care and do not want cost to be their barrier to getting it.
Okay, so Kamala just trashed him on health care. All right, and then we also have Biden and Booker who got into it.
The fact is that the bills that the future president here, that the senator is talking about are bills that were passed years ago, and they were passed overwhelmingly. Since 2007, I, for example, tried to get the crack powder cocaine disparity totally eliminated. In 2007, you became mayor. You had a police department you went out and you hired Rudy Giuliani's guy. You engaged in stop and frisk. You had 75% of those stops reviewed as illegal. You found yourself in a situation where 3 times as many African-American kids were caught in that chain and caught up. The Justice Department came after you for saying you were engaging in behavior that was inappropriate. And then, in fact, nothing happened the entire time you were mayor.
Thank you, Senator Booker. You want to respond?
Well, first of all, I'm grateful that he endorsed my presidency already, but I'll tell you this. It's no secret that I inherited a police department with massive problems and decades-long challenges. But the head of the ACLU has already said, the head of the New Jersey ACLU, that I put forth national standard-setting accountability. Mr. Vice President, I didn't interrupt you. Please show me that respect, sir. We have a system right now that's broken. And if you want to compare records, and frankly, I'm shocked that you do, I am happy to do that. Because all of the problems that he is talking about, that he created, I actually led the bill that got passed into law that reverses the damage that your bills, that you were, frankly, to correct you, Mr. Vice President, you were bragging, calling it the Biden crime bill up till 2015.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Biden.
Number one, the bill he talks about is a bill that in our administration we passed. We passed that bill that you added on to. That's the bill, in fact, you passed. And the fact of the matter is, secondly, there was nothing done for the entire 8 years he was mayor. There was nothing done to deal with the police department that was corrupt. Why did you announce on the first day a zero-tolerance policy of stop and frisk and hire Rudy Giuliani's guy in 2007 when I was trying to get rid of the crack cocaine?
Mr. Vice President, there's a saying in my community, you're dipping into the Kool-Aid and you don't even know the flavor. You need to come to the city of Newark and see the reforms that we put in place. The New Jersey head of the ACLU has said that I embraced reforms, not just in action, but in deed. Sir, you are trying to shift the view from what you created.
Okay. So that was the big criminal justice argument. Neither one of them came out smelling like a rose, although Cory Booker had a good one-liner that came from, I think, a BET stand-up special. I don't know. And then Kirsten Gillibrand, she tried to land a punch.
But Mr. Vice President, you didn't answer my question. What did you mean when you said when a woman works outside the home, it's resulting in, quote, the deterioration of family? That we are avoiding, these are quotes. It was the title of the op-ed. And that just causes concern for me because we know America's women are working. 4 out of 10 moms have to work. They are the primary or sole wage earners. They actually have to put food on the table. 8 out of 10 moms are working today. Most women have to work to provide for their kids. Many women want to be working to provide for their communities and to help people.
Let the Vice President
either you don't believe it today, or what did you mean when you said it then?
In the very beginning, my deceased wife worked, but we had children. My present wife has worked all the way through raising our children. The fact of the matter is, the situation is one that I don't know what's happened. I wrote the Violence Against Women Act, Lilly Ledbetter. I was deeply involved in making sure the equal pay amendments. I was deeply involved in all these things. I came up with the It's On Us proposal to see to it that women were treated more decently on college campuses. You came to Syracuse University with me and said it was wonderful. I'm passionate about the concern, making sure women are treated equally. I don't know what's happened except that you're now running for president.
So I understand, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Vice President, I respect you deeply. I respect you deeply. But those words are very specific.
Yes, and there are also words from 1981. So that did not land well, okay? And then he even got heckled from the audience. I mean, this was a real pile-on.
I found that the secretary, we sat together in many meetings. I never heard him talk about any of this when he was the secretary.
Please be respectful. Please be respectful in the crowd. Please continue, Mr. Vice President.
The fact is, I don't know if you can hear, I can hear, but anyway.
I can hear.
We can hear fine, Mr. Vice President. Please continue.
They were yelling at him, 3 million deportations, 3 million deportations. I mean, everybody took a piece out of Biden last night, everybody. And that man, he was not exactly, ninja-like, okay? He just smiled and he was like, okay. But everybody tried to take a piece out of him. And I got to say that right now, 51% of this country thinks that Joe Biden is the only, well, it's not the only guy, but that Joe Biden is the most likely to beat Donald Trump. Now, there's also polling that shows that just about everybody that's running for president on our side beats Donald Trump, including Bernie Sanders, including Elizabeth Warren. Okay? So, but this pile-on, I mean, what now? I can already see it and hear it. The clips of us trashing each other being edited into a commercial for the nominee, whoever becomes the nominee at the convention. I can just see it. I can hear it. I mean, if it's Cory Booker, saying, we got a saying from BET stand-up comedy that you're dipping into the Kool-Aid and you don't even know what flavor it is, the answer is red. But if he's going to say that, I could see it being edited into a commercial for Donald Trump. And what's the tagline going to be? What do you got to lose? Right? So this made no sense to me. It really didn't. And so I have to say that the winners of these two debates are the people with the most consistent records on criminal justice, the most consistent records on health care, Medicare for all, the most consistent on immigration, the most consistent on environmental policy, the most consistent on taking on big banks, the most consistent on consumer protection. And they were not on the stage last night. But to stand there and use this opportunity to gin up some donors or to gin up, to get you from 0% to 2% so you could make it that was unforgivable. That was disgusting. That was just thoughtless. It was bizarre. It was a mistake. But I have to say, that's what you get when you get the third way candidates all together on a stage. And that's what you had last night. These are all third way dudes, all of them moderates.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. That would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you were in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Senator Harris.
My entire career, I have been personally opposed to the death penalty, and that has never changed. And I dare anybody who is in a position to make that decision, to face the people I have faced, to say, I will not seek the death penalty. That is my background. That is my work. I am proud of it. I think you can judge people by when they are under fire, and it's not about some fancy opinion on a stage, but when they're in the position to actually make a decision, what do they do?
Incoming. Now, what you have to realize is that Tulsi Gabbard is not qualified for the next round. And she really tried last night to trash Kamala Harris in order to get some additional donors. And she also is trying to make a name for herself as a congresswoman from Hawaii. And, Kamala Harris actually has been a prosecutor since the 80s. And in the 80s, to now, her record is mixed. In the 80s, she was a tough on crime prosecutor. And later on in her life, she fought very, very hard for criminal justice reform. She did the Back on Track program. She tried to bring it to the entire state of California after Black Lives Matter took off. She fought to release prisoners based on these nonviolent drug offenses. She did a lot of good stuff. She also did a lot of, but what is the sense in having Tulsi Gabbard appear in a pro-Trump commercial, which will happen, instead of being a team player and, saying that. But I will say she got under Kamala's skin. There's no question, because Kamala Harris was interviewed after, and all she could say was, well, I'm a top-tier candidate. It was like Mean Girls last night. It really was. It was like two Mean Girls, because she said, oh, well, I'm a top-tier candidate, and I know it may sound immodest, and she never really answered the question.
Did you expect that from Tulsi Gabbard? Had you had interaction about that in the past, and how do you think it went?
Well, I mean, listen, this is going to sound immodest, but I'm obviously a top-tier candidate, and so I did expect that I would be on the stage and take hits tonight, because there are a lot of people that are trying to make the stage for the next debate.
Yeah, for a lot of them, it's do or die.
Well, yeah, and especially when people are at 0 or 1% or whatever she might be at. And so I did expect that I might take hits tonight. But, listen, I think that this coming from someone who has been an apologist for an individual, Assad, who has murdered the people of his country like cockroaches. She who has embraced and been an apologist for him in a way that she refuses to call him a war criminal. I can only take what she says in her opinion so seriously.
Yeah, but she didn't answer any of the, accusations. And you just know that Tulsi Gabbard got under Kamala Harris's skin and that she did some damage. Is it fatal? No. Kamala Harris, as we know, is a prosecutor, and she was a prosecutor in the 80s. And in the 80s, the law was the law, and she had to enforce it, and that's just a fact. She faced down rapists. She faced down murderers. She faced down big pharma. She faced down banks. She did a lot of good, but she also has a mixed record. Same with Joe Biden. That's why Cory Booker had an argument that he could throw in Biden's face last night about those crime bills. Lots of them, from 88 to 89 to 94. There's lots of crime bills. And that's why I'm saying to the idea that you're supposed to stand on a stage as a Democrat and say, I'm better than Trump, repeat, I can do a better job, repeat, I'm better than Trump. Instead of, this was this was shocking. It was unbelievable. It was really, it was insanity. Kamala Harris is, she's not Donald Trump. And Tulsi Gabbard tried to make her out as being a Donald Trump. Cory Booker tried to make Joe Biden look like Jeffrey Epstein. Okay, and none of these things are true. These people with long records have mixed records during different, periods in America's history. That is why I would like to see somebody with clean hands as our nominee. That would be a good thing, not a bad thing. Martha in North Carolina.
Hi.
Hey.
I just want to say that I think one thing wrong with the debate is the moderators. I don't think they ask pertinent questions.
Well, they didn't give good answers either. I mean, we can discuss the fact that, it's corporate media and that Bernie on night one actually had the temerity to call out the fact that no questions were being asked about Big Pharma because you were going to see an ad from Big Pharma in the debate, right? Which you did. Okay, so until we get the League of Women Voters back in charge of our debates and we keep corporate America in charge of our debates, that's going to be the level of conversation. However, they did not have good answers. When they'd spent an enormous amount of time on healthcare, an enormous amount of time.
Yeah.
And nobody explained, hey, if you're making $100,000, maybe your taxes go up 4% under Bernie's plan, and so you're taxed an extra $4,000. But guess what? It saves you $500 a month in premiums, which right there is $6,000. Bam, you just saved $2,000, and that doesn't include the deductible and copay. Now, I just told you that in less than 30 seconds.
You're right.
Yeah, so you could blame the vessel. You can blame, corporate media. That's why I'm not part of it. I quit. You know that. I walked away. 2014, haven't worked for corporate 5 years. Found my own way. But there were real answers to give.
Does the White House think this visit went well, Maggie? Do you have any sense?
They don't. No.
If they're waking up this morning happy about this?
Most people, well, they would, I suspect, not say that publicly, will privately admit that yesterday was something of a debacle, that these were not the headlines that they wanted to see. They wanted him to go in and behave differently. The goal was to have him go in and get out with making as little news as possible. He actually has done that in the past. He did it after Pittsburgh, where there was also controversy. After the synagogue shooting there, he was much more able to sort of stay calm. Yesterday, he couldn't stop watching television news where Democratic candidates were attacking him. And this is part of the process. I mean, it's to your point that there was no sort of visible presence of the federal government in a meaningful way as the shootings were taking place. And the day after, the president was at his club at Bedminster. He crashed a wedding that was taking place there. This is the kind of thing that any president would have been criticized for. Barack Obama, George W. Bush. But this president reacts very poorly to criticism, and he lashed out.
I know nothing.
Yeah, he knows nothing. Can we just ban him from ever attending any place where empathy is, something that you would want? Can we just ban him from all national tragedies and just, downshift into solving our own problems by electing a different party? Could we just do that? Because I think we know who's for gun control. I think we understand who's for background checks. And that would be 90% of us. And by us, I mean the U.S., all of us. This is crazy. This is absolute madness. So the White House thinks he failed miserably in Dayton. They think he failed miserably in El Paso. They think it was a debacle. And it was. This little girl whose parents were taken away. I tweeted out this video. 1 million people did. It's heartbreaking. It's like a WTF moment. No, seriously, it's like WTF, people. What are we doing? Right? And I tweeted this out, and people, you're exploiting children. I'm exploiting children. It's apparently too much reality for people that is seeping into this fantastical world of the 2-minute hate that they live in with Donald Trump as their guide through, fake proclamations and racism and hatred and blaming others for what, corporate America has done to working Americans. It's just like so unbelievable. So I just want to compare and contrast a bit here, okay? This apparently is too much reality for Trumpanzees.
For the parents are stuck over there in jail. I'm not gonna have nothing. It's the first day of school for me. My dad bought everything for me to live over here. The rent, and I don't know what I'm gonna eat. And I'm so lonely right now. I need my dad for me. My dad didn't do nothing. He's not a criminal. So the governments, please put your heart. Let my parents be free with everybody else, please. Don't leave the child with kindness and everything.
Okay, if that didn't upset you, if that didn't move you, if that didn't hurt your soul, then you don't have one. But apparently that's too much reality for the Trumpanzees. However, let's compare her grief, which was brought on by Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's reaction to grief that was brought on by Donald Trump in El Paso. Watch this.
I've been talking to a hospital official at El Paso's University Medical Center, and I'm told none of the 8 patients who were on hand for the president's visit wanted to meet Mr. Trump. Quote, some didn't want any visitors, the official said, before adding, and some did not want to meet the president. We've confirmed 2 patients who had been discharged were brought back to the hospital to meet with the president. CNN has learned one of those patients was the 2-month-old baby who was shielded by his parents during the shooting. That baby has been identified as the child of Jordan and Andre Anchondo, who died protecting him. According to the hospital official, the president displayed a, quote, absence of empathy during his visit. That hospital official went on to say the president made other comments similar to his remarks about former Congressman Beto O'Rourke that left some staffers thinking Mr. Trump was not focused enough on consoling people. That hospital official went on to say about these patients who are being cared for at University Medical Center, quote, the stories and retelling of their experience at that Walmart will chill you to your core and break your heart.
So Trump is posing with an infant whose parents, plural, were shot to death, making that little 2-month-old baby an orphan. And Trump had that infant, that orphan baby, brought back to the hospital so that he could pose with it and give a thumbs up and smile. And at the exact same time he was posing with a thumbs up and smiling with this poor orphaned infant, his stormtroopers, his deportation force, were in Mississippi coming between even more parents and their innocent children. I mean, he is targeting, working families, and by targeting, I mean in every way that you could conceive. If you think about, all this grief that Donald Trump has caused, especially this with posing with an orphan baby. Oh my God, who's exploiting babies? But in this sense, this baby was orphaned because of Donald Trump's targeting of Mexicans. And so in that sense, it's the president posing with the prey. It's like Donald Trump Jr. could relate. Do you know what I mean? It's like the baby was protected from a shooter who was targeting people that Donald Trump told him to target. It's like a photo of a hunter posing with their prey. This is the sickest man, I hope, in our country. I doubt it. But he is, you want to hear? Okay, so check this out. This is proof positive that Donald Trump is literally causing murder and mayhem. Literally causing it. There is a new defense now that criminal attorneys across the country are using. I know you know the story. Do you know the story of the a man? His name's Kurt Brockway. Probably doesn't ring a bell, but he's the guy from Montana who is accused of throwing a 13-year-old boy to the ground, fracturing his skull at a rodeo in Montana, because the 13-year-old boy didn't know he was supposed to take his hat off during the playing of the national anthem. Maybe he was following the rules for active military. You know, I don't know. If you're active military, you don't take your hat off during the playing of the national anthem. Just saying. Different rules for different roles. Anyway, this man who threw this 13-year-old boy to the ground fractured his skull in a fit of rage because the little boy did not take his hat off during the playing of the national anthem has entered his defense. Here it is. He believes he was acting on an order by the commander-in-chief. No, I'm not kidding. His name is Kurt Brockway. He's a U.S. Army veteran, and his lawyer wrote to the court that this man believed he was acting on an order by the commander-in-chief. Now, here's a little detail you need to know. Mr. Brockway has suffered a traumatic brain injury because he was in a car crash in 2000. And so he believes, as a former U.S. Army veteran, quote, his commander-in-chief is telling people that if they kneel, they should be fired, or if they burn a flag, they should be punished. He certainly did not understand that throwing the boy to the ground was a crime. He believed he was following orders from his commander-in-chief. This is going to be in courts all across this country. It is actually happening in Cesar Sayoc's case. He's the guy who sent all those pipe bombs that Trump told him to do it.
Clear. All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Is your base supporting background checks?
I think my base relies very much on common sense, and they rely on me in terms of telling them what's happening. I think meaningful background checks, I don't just say background checks, because we passed background checks a number of times, meaning the Democrats, but everybody knew they weren't that strong.
Expand the law.
I think meaningful background checks are a real positive. Politically, I can't tell you. You know, I don't know, good, bad, or indifferent. I don't care politically. I don't want to have crazy people having guns.
His base will listen to him. The question was, will your base support background checks? Well, first he lies and said we already passed them, but they weren't good. We never passed background checks. We don't have background checks. The NICS system is, only as good as the data that's put into them, and the data isn't being put into whatever. But he's saying my base will listen to me. My base will do whatever I tell them to do. This is kind of like Charlie Manson stuff, right? Remember, Charlie Manson never killed anybody either. He ordered others to do it, right? But he was just as guilty for the murders of Sharon Tate and J. Sebring and all those. Okay, that aside, Donald Trump is now a legitimate, or defense lawyers think it's a legitimate defense to make in court. Cesar Sayoc, the guy who sent all the pipe bombs to the media companies, the guy who said that, that was driving around Florida with that white van with all the pro-Trump, anti-Hillary with the crosshairs and all that stuff on his, just plastered all over his van, right? His attorney is arguing, quote, this is from the court brief. In this darkness, Mr. Sayoc found light in Donald J. Trump. This is the court filing that was filed for Cesar Sayoc by his defense attorney, who, was sentenced Monday after he pled guilty to sending pipe bombs to any critic of the president that he could identify, right? So his lawyer says, in this darkness, Mr. Sayoc found light in Donald J. Trump. He became obsessed with attacks from those he perceived as Trump's enemies and decided to act out, to send a message, to try to intimidate and scare Trump's perceived enemies. He is a Trump super fan. Mr. Sayoc began to consider Democrats as not just dangerous in theory, but imminently and seriously dangerous to his personal safety. That is a Trump defense. Patrick Stein, he's one of the three men that were convicted of trying to bomb in Kansas a apartment complex where Somali refugees peacefully live. His lawyer argued that, quote, the court cannot ignore the circumstances of one of the most rhetorically mold-breaking, violent, awful, hateful, and contentious presidential elections in modern history. There's also an attorney for a man in LA, in Los Angeles, who posted anti-Muslim threats on the Facebook page of a mosque. And his defense attorney has argued that his client, quote, uses similar language and expresses similar views to campaign statements made from then candidate Donald Trump. In Florida, a man also made threatening calls to a mosque, and his attorney noted, quote, the very distinctly political climate, and cited Donald Trump's Muslim ban as being a reason this man perceived Muslims as being a threat. He was just following the lead of the president and trying to protect his country. There was a Penn State University student who threatened to put a bullet in an Indian man, and his attorney has argued that he is motivated by his love of country, and that while Trump was running for president of the United States, Trump told this Penn State University student, we've got to check people out more closely. It's the Trump defense, all right? Last year, a man who was accused of groping a woman on an airplane told the FBI agents, quote, the president of the United States says it's okay to grab women by their private parts. And then we have this man at the rodeo in Montana who assaulted a child for not taking off his hat. And his lawyer writes his commander-in-chief is telling people that if they kneel, they should be fired, or if they burn a flag, they should be punished. So he does not recognize assault as a crime. The El Paso shooter said he cased, this is what he said so far to the police, because, you know, they took him alive. He said he was casing the Walmart for Mexicans. He wanted to make sure there were plenty in there because he was, going to shoot Mexicans because Donald Trump told them that they are invading Texas. They're invading Texas. They said that his rhetoric was virtually indistinguishable from what Trump had said on Twitter and Facebook, and still says on Facebook. He is still, Donald Trump's still running invader ads. He's still running ads saying this is an invasion. And, people consume more conservative news feeds on Facebook than they do, feeds like mine, right? They just do. So there is no doubt that the president's words are feeding this machinery of hatred in this country. I can't tell you how many candidates have said it. Elizabeth Warren has said it. Joe Biden has said it. Cory Booker said it in a church yesterday. I mean, everybody gets it. The lawyers obviously get it. The defense lawyers in this country obviously get it. There is a direct connection between telling people it's okay to act on your taught hatred and the president's, it's like the president gives permission. I'll get your legal fees. There was a guy who subscribes to, this QAnon crazy cult conspiracy theory. Donald Trump had a social media summit and he brought the Q people in there. And, he brought Gorka, white supremacist, Gorka's wife, white supremacist, the guy from Turning Point USA, white supremacist. He brought in, the Q people. And just, what was it, when I was in Denver, right? So it was a couple weeks ago, the trial for a man who killed a mob boss. The defense was made known, right? And the guy who killed the mob boss, he was sitting in court and people saw some of the video and he had MAGA tattooed on his hand and stuff and nobody could understand what that was about. Turns out he believed that this mob boss was going to, that this mob boss in particular was anti-Donald Trump. And this mob boss was going to act to do something bad to Donald Trump. So he drove to this mob boss's house. And when the mob boss was out on the lawn, this guy murdered him. He murdered him because he believed that he was, a mob boss that was going to do something bad to Donald Trump's, like it was, between the five families or something. And, never knew it, but it was Barzini all along. So he killed him.
Clear. Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. We have seen repeatedly where there is a national crisis, he gives a speech off of a teleprompter, and then he undercuts his own words either before it and after it. He gave an address on Monday where he did talk about white supremacy and he did disavow bigotry and racism. But his campaign is continuing to air Facebook ads talking about an invasion, and they have talked about a quote-unquote illegal invasion repeatedly. El Paso has been a center of a lot of the border crossing turmoil, and so it is not a surprise that he has struggled in this moment. He also he doesn't do well fundamentally on these major moments that require empathy and somebody looking as if they are sort of rallying the nation and rallying people to support one another, and you saw it throughout the day. He felt as if he was being personally attacked and no one was defending him, and so he took to Twitter.
He's a victim.
And again, and there was an absence of leadership on the days of the shootings themselves, and there's been this strange brew of leadership in the days since. I'm just going to put up on the screen the names of the people that he talked about yesterday. The former Vice President Joe Biden, Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown, Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, Senator Bernie Sanders, Julian Castro, Joaquin Castro, Beto O'Rourke, Shep Smith, Brian Williams, Tim O'Brien. That's quite a list.
That's insane. You have all kinds of people suffering. He's using an orphaned baby as a prop to give a thumbs up and a lock her up smile, right? At the same time, he's ordering families to be targeted in Mississippi in 6 different cities who are doing absolutely nothing but butchering chickens so we can eat dinner. It's just so the 680 people that were rounded up, 570 of them have been let go. 570 of them have been let go. This was all for show. The man is just he's just a brute. He's mean and cruel and dead inside, and he's trying to make America die inside. And now it's become a legitimate defense. So I was telling you this story, right? Let me just show you this. The lawyer for the shooter of a Gambino crime family boss, okay, who drove up to this crime family boss's house. The guy from the Gambino crime family standing outside on his lawn, and he's gunned down. He's gunned down by a guy named Anthony Comello. Okay, so Anthony Comello. Why do Italians kill Italians? Right? You never hear about that. Anyway, Anthony Comello is being defended, and in the new court filing in this case of murder, his attorney argues, this is the Trump defense, that he became so engrossed with QAnon that he felt Democratic politicians, celebrities, and people associated with organized crime were part of the deep state. And the lawyer wrote that his client believed he was on a mission to save the American way of life. Quote, this is from the court filing, okay? Beginning with the election of President Trump in November 2016, Anthony Comello's family began to notice changes to his personality. This is his lawyer, Robert Gottlieb. Mr. Comello's support for QAnon went beyond mere participation in a radical political organization. It evolved into an obsession. When Comello arrived at Callie's home, the plan was to stage a civilian arrest of Callie, not shoot him. But after a heated exchange with Callie, Comello said that the mob boss made a furtive action with his hand which made Anthony Comello afraid for his life. So he reached into his pickup truck, grabbed his gun, and killed Callie. And his lawyer says because of his self-perceived status in QAnon, Mr. Comello became certain that he was enjoying the protection of President Trump himself and that he had the full support of the president. He held up his palms in court and it had scribblings of MAGA on it and the letter Q on the other hand. Now, I pulled a video yesterday of some very, culty-like woman in a car. And she's sitting in her car recording herself while she's driving, telling you, you should remember the day when you first found Q. Q is truth. Q is freedom. Q, and like at the beginning of the video, I mean, Scotty and I were watching it and we thought it was a joke. We thought, she's going to bust out into laughter or something, or this is, something she's going to tweet and it's going to be fun. No, these people are like ate up with it. I mean, this cannot end well, It just, it can't end well. David Koresh and the Branch Davidian cult, it didn't end well. Jim Jones in Guyana did not end well. Jackie Spear, who's now a congressman, was a staffer for the congressman that was killed in Guyana when he went there to see what the hell was going on. She got 5 bullets in her to this day. Okay, that did not end well. This is not Kool-Aid. This is Fool-Aid. This is crazy. These people are just being... and now it's a real defense. It's a defense. Lawyers are actually writing this with a straight face into, briefs defending their clients. Well, they think they have the full support of Trump. They thought they were obeying orders from Trump. Trump is telling them to kill, kill, kill. Trump is telling them to do it. Trump is telling them to preserve the American way of life. Trump is telling them we're being invaded. Trump is telling them that, Mexicans are rapists and they're drug dealers and all they do is murder, 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 which is what he said at that rally in El Paso. Murder, murder. I mean, he said it like over and over. It's almost like the defense, except it failed. You remember during the metal years, I think it was what was it? Not Black Sabbath. It was another leather band. And they went on trial because if you played their record backwards or something like this, Judas Priest it was, right? So it was the Judas Priest trial, and the lawyers tried to blame the music, like now they're blaming the videos, right? Oh, by the way, Walmart has taken decisive action, everybody. Decisive action. No, they're not going to ban the sale of guns. They're going to turn off any Xbox or any Sony PlayStation in their store that features any first-person shooter videos. You'll still be able to buy them, but they won't put them on display. Why? That'll solve everything. This is the Judas Priest defense, right? So the lawyer tried to argue that this kid who killed did it because he was playing Judas Priest records backwards. And Rob Halpern, I think that was Rob, the lead singer for... He was called to testify at this freaking trial. That was so bizarre. Of course, it failed. But now they're deploying the same defense. Video games. Donald Trump is doing it. Well, Donald Trump is doing it. He is a cult. He's a one-man cult. He's David Koresh. He's, Jim Jones. And I've said this for the longest time. I think I'm the one that invented the hashtag Cult45. It just feels like a cult. It seems like a cult when you talk to people like that. They always have an excuse for any horrific thing that happens. It's always an excuse for it. Well, they shouldn't have come here in the first place.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, I'm going to show you Crazy Q lady. She's a medical doctor. Family practitioner.
Remember this moment. Please remember where you were and the circumstances. The very first time you ever asked, who or what is Q? And here's why. Q is you, and Q is me. Q is logic. Q is a plan to save the world. Q is not a secret, but Q is secretive. Carefully crafted secret education that anyone can have access to. Q, one day, will be in every history book. Q is the best thing that has ever happened to you. So remember this moment permanently.
Oh my God. Is she? She gives me chills. She's the creepiest of the creepy. That is a family practitioner, a medical doctor. I don't even bother giving her name because she's so ate up with it that you never know. But she's I mean, this is so sick what's going on. And now you got this guy who believes that, he has the protection of Donald Trump, who goes to a mob boss's house and, gets into some shouting match with him, believes Donald Trump will protect him. He goes into his truck, gets a gun, shoots the guy on his front lawn. And now he is on trial for murder, and his attorney is making the Trump defense. Well, Donald Trump is, he's got them all in a spell. He's got them in, they're under a spell, and there's really not anything we could do. He's convinced people that if they do violence, he will get their legal bills. He's convinced people that if they do violence, he will pardon them. If they are corrupt, Donald Trump is literally considering pardoning Rod Blagojevich. Do you remember Rod? Anybody remember Rod? So Rod was the governor of Illinois when Obama got elected president. And so Obama left his Senate seat to go to the White House. And Rod Blagojevich actually made phone calls that were recorded where he said, I got this thing, the Senate seat, and it's so freaking valuable, I'm not freaking giving it away. And he tried to sell Obama's Senate seat to somebody who would pay to be a senator from Illinois. And he got caught. And while he was on trial, before his trial, I should say, he was featured on The Celebrity Apprentice. Oh, yeah. You know who was also in the boardroom during that episode where Rod Blagojevich was fired? Erin Burnett from CNN. Don't ask me why she appeared on The Apprentice, Celebrity Apprentice. But I've looked at that tape. I can't play it because Donald Trump owns it. And I'll get flagged. Yeah, but it doesn't really matter. All I could tell you is that because Rod Blagojevich was guilty of selling a Senate seat and got convicted for it and was given 8 years or something, and he's been in jail for 7, something like this. So Donald Trump is trying to send a message that if you're a corrupt politician, don't worry, just make sure he gets reelected. He'll pardon you. He'll get your back. He'll get you out of jail. He'll do all kinds of, and so these Q people are starting to believe that if they kill anybody or if they do anything or if they throw a kid to the ground and fracture their skull because they don't salute the flag in the manner that you think they should, then Donald Trump will, he'll get your legal bills, or Donald Trump will pardon you, or Donald Trump will give you clemency, or Donald Trump will spring you from the joint. I mean, this is the most unbelievable situation America has ever had on its hands. Now, this thing with the intelligence, remember he wanted to take this guy John Ratcliffe, the guy who auditioned during the Mueller hearing, saying Mueller was the criminal. Remember that? There was no question for Bob Mueller in John Ratcliffe's future. He just railed at Mueller while Mueller was sitting there, used Mueller as a prop, so he could audition in front of Donald Trump on the TV and call Mueller the lawbreaker here, right? And of course it worked. Trump saw it on the TV and nominated him to be the DNI, the guy who's in charge of all the other intelligence agencies. On top of all the other 16 intelligence agencies is this W created director of national intelligence. I mean, W manufactured all these new bureaucracies, right? Oh, they're for smaller government, but hey, let's create a new position, the DNI. Hey, let's create a new agency, the Department of Homeland Security. Hey, let's create stormtroopers. We'll call it ICE. You know, I mean, sick stuff, right? But, oh, they're all for smaller government. Yeah, sure they are. However, Radcliffe lied and said he had prosecuted terrorists, he had an intelligence background, and none of it turned out to be true. So even Mitch McConnell said, you're going to have to pull this one. So Donald Trump told him you're going to have to withdraw your name. So Radcliffe, being the good soldier, you know, and now being the cult leader, withdraws his name. So the number 2 at the Intel department, because, you know, Dan Coates is retiring. He's had it. He's sick of it. I mean, this is a guy who warns that Russia is still doing everything that it did during 2016. And so Donald Trump wants the intelligence to say something else. And Dan Coates is like, I'm so sick of him taking our warnings and, reversing them, or calling us liars, or killing our reports, or saying our testimony was false. I saw him on TV and he's a weak guy, whatever, right? So he resigned so you would pay attention. And so the number 2, who's a woman, was going to take that position. Donald Trump forced her to resign yesterday as well. And the reason is simple. Russia is going to mess with us during this election. There are still bots all over the place. I see them, like somebody will call you something, or they'll do something really ugly to you on social media. And you respond to them, or before you respond to them, always check and see how many followers they have. And if they have 0 or 3, then it's not a real account. It's not a real account. So they're still there, and they're still playing, and they're making things trend that seem odd. Everybody's like, why is this trending? That is somebody manipulating the search results on social media. And this is what that social media summit that he had was discussing in private, how to do this, there's all kinds of interference in social media right now. Some is just white supremacists. The guy from Turning Point USA, you remember there was a little scandal the other day that some AV squad guy who worked at Turning Point USA was a graphic artist, and he was, playing around with the seal of the United States, our eagle with the talons, right? And they've got arrows in there. And he put golf clubs and money in the talons, and he put a 2-headed eagle instead of a 1-headed eagle, which is the Russian symbol. And some lackadaisical person who didn't get, was hosting Donald Trump, who went to a Turning Point. They are white supremacists, Turning Point USA. And he went to one of their conferences, or whatever white supremacists call their gaggles, their meetings. I don't know. But Donald Trump went to speak, and he spoke the whole time in front of that bad graphic, okay, that had the Russian symbol on it, except with golf clubs and money in the talon of the eagle head. Well, those were some of the people he had at the social media summit. This is all to spread white supremacy. That is why Donald Trump, stood there and posed with an orphan baby, used a baby who doesn't know any, and the baby is like 2 months old. I just hope that baby never, ever grows up thinking that they were responsible in any way for their parents' death because Donald Trump photographed him, or that they feel their life is cursed because they grow up and they go, yeah, my life was cursed from the beginning. I ended up being the orphan in Donald Trump's hands after my parents were killed because of him. Do you know what I mean? It's so sick and twisted. But he gives a thumbs up like this. I mean, it's almost like, offering up the baby as a sacrifice to these crazy QAnon. I mean, it's just such a twisted mess. It's such a twisted mess. But as he's posing with the orphaned Mexican baby, or the orphaned Hispanic baby, he's ordering these raids on these chicken butchering, plants. That's what it is. These are chicken processing plants. Oh, by the way, there were thousands of half-butchered chickens left behind, and the plant manager had to clean up all of that. And then the whole system broke down because there was no one to work. People are still afraid to go to school in Mississippi. Migrant children, they're still afraid to go to school. A lot of people are afraid to go to work. They're hiding in their own trailers, in their own houses. This man is so dangerous.
The charge rule, President Trump's administration is reinforcing the ideals of self-sufficiency and personal responsibility, ensuring that immigrants are able to support themselves and become successful here in America. Our rule generally prevents aliens who are likely to become a public charge from coming to the United States or remaining here and getting a green card. Public charge is now defined in a way that ensures the law is meaningfully enforced and that those who are subject to it are self-sufficient. Importantly, this final rule has no impact on humanitarian-based immigration programs for refugees and asylees. No impact on refugees or asylees. And it clarifies the exemption for trafficking victims and victims of domestic violence. This rule will cover, for USCIS, almost 400,000 people a year whose applications to become legal permanent residents will include a meaningful analysis of whether they're likely to become a public charge or not. I do not think by any means we're ready to take anything off the Statute of Liberty.
Oh my God, America officially has a cover charge. Oh my God. All right, everybody. So even if you're here legally, they're going to look at your income status, and they're going to make sure you have first, last, and security deposit before you get your green card renewed. This is like the most amazing portion of the culture war. Okay? This is absolute madness. This is crazy. This is people who are married to American citizens. There are people out there that, you know, you're married to somebody who immigrated here, and you have signed the form saying that you are the official sponsor. You've already demonstrated that you've got at least $41,000 in income to support, your coupledom or whatever you want to call it. Well, now, even if your spouse is sponsored by you and you've demonstrated that you got the cash to support that person who doesn't have a work permit is now going to have to demonstrate that they can earn $41,000 a year, or they're going to be deemed a likely dependent. Now, if you don't have a work permit, but you're sponsored and you work, that's illegal. If you don't have a work permit, but you have to show income, how the F do you do that? This is another attack, and this is on legal immigrants. This is really sick, and they're going to do it by executive order. Okay, this particular public charge crap goes back to 1882. In order for the United States to allow a denial of a visa to anybody who's likely to become a public charge, without ever defining what a public charge is, this was about the Chinese invasion. You know, and the Chinese were so detrimental to our society that, hey, we have railroads now. You know what I mean? This is just so sick. But since 1999, immigration officers have adopted the guiding principle that a public charge is someone, quote, primarily dependent on the government for subsistence. Now, Congress has made it illegal for an immigrant to get welfare. So that's a non-starter. Immigrants don't get welfare. What we're talking about here is legal immigration. What we're talking about, and I just want to say, Ken Cuccinelli, the Cooch is an acting director. So is the Bureau of Prisons an acting director. And by the way, on the Epstein debacle, the warden of the Manhattan Correctional has resigned, and two staffers are on leave. Now, I will tell you that there are a bunch of conspiracies out there. Yesterday I was trying to explain to you, we have to go slow on breaking news like this. You have to go slow on shooters. You have to go slow on conspiracy theories, because obviously Jeffrey Epstein was involved in a conspiracy. Okay? He was. There was a conspiracy indictment. And so they're hunting for Ghislaine Maxwell now. They're hunting for her. Everybody's got to find her. Everybody's got to identify the people who helped him traffic these girls. Everybody. The police are going to have to do it. The civil attorneys are going to have to do it. You know, the victims have moved into the civil arena. And you got the New York, SDNY in New York. They're still, looking at the conspiracy indictment, and they're trying to find all the people that enabled him. So please go slow. I will say I got a ginormous amount of email yesterday about, articles in the New York Post. The New York Post. I know. But it quotes a friend. It quotes a friend of John Gotti, dearly departed Gotti, right? It quotes a friend of his saying that when he used to visit John Gotti, he knew that there were tons of guards on the take, and that if you had some money, you could get anything you wanted. In fact, John Gotti got Peter Luger's, which is a very famous steakhouse in New York. It's delicious. It's unbelievable. It's over the top, and it's very freaking expensive. But that he got Peter Luger's delivered to him whenever he wanted it, a la Goodfellas, right? He's got some lobsters, and, here's some wine. Now we can eat. You know what I mean? And a very good system for cutting the garlic. Very good. Razor thin so it would dissolve in the olive oil. So that's what that's what his friend is saying, and that Epstein could not have killed himself without somebody bringing him the I don't know, rope or sheets or whatever. And no one knows. This is I heard. This is a story where John Gotti's friend heard from a friend that, come on, we got to go slow here, because this is the most disgusting friend that Trump has ever had. And we want to make sure that whatever bubbles up, whatever information becomes known, knowable, and factually checks out, that it is something that America understands is true, that America understands, Trump knew about, that he was, watching while all this was going on, that it was this is the kind of thing. And if it was Dershowitz, if it was, what's his name? Richardson from New Mexico, where Epstein did have a mansion, the Zorro Ranch, still does. So he was the governor of New Mexico, and wouldn't it make sense that, maybe he visited one of the billionaires? And I don't know, but you can't just put this crap out there. Right now, what we got is a culture war filled with conspiracy theories by the president of the United States. There are countless hours that could be filled with these conspiracy theories that Trump has poured into the brains of QAnon, poured into the brains of maggots, poured into the brains of Cult 45, poured into the brains of Al-Qaeda, the base. He was the original Papers, Please. He was the original birther, right? Vince Foster, Hillary Clinton had him killed. The Clintons killed Epstein. Ted Cruz's dad killed Kennedy. He loves murder. He's fascinated by murder. He's also fascinated by human trafficking. He's made up conspiracies about women in vans with tape around their mouth. He's taken scenes out of Day of the Soldado and, made them into like true stories with his crazy rantings. He says Joe Scarborough killed his intern. Antonin Scalia was murdered. He's a vaxxer. He says vaccinations cause autism. Hurricane Maria, he says only 6 to 18 people died. It's a lie that 3,000 people died. He said that, he saw Muslims celebrating 9/11. He saw them dancing in the streets in New Jersey. You cannot see New Jersey from Trump Tower in Midtown Manhattan. But he saw it. They celebrated. The guy is full of garbage.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Would you also agree that Emma Lazarus's words etched on the Statue of Liberty, "Give me your tired, your poor," are also part of the American ethos?
They certainly are. Give me your tired and your poor who can stand on their own 2 feet and who will not become a public charge. That plaque was put on the Statue of Liberty at almost the same time as the first public charge law was passed. Very interesting timing.
Oh my God. Okay, so let's just think about Ken Cuccinelli's family and see whether or not they would have been allowed into the country. Yeah, I don't think they checked at Ellis Island for your bank balance. I don't think they did, Ken. I'm not really sure, but, I'm just going to say, as acting director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and of course he's just acting, if these kind of Trump rules had always been in effect, I think the name Cuccinelli would have been enough to disqualify your ancestors from entering. You cannot run Ellis Island or immigration ports of entry like Studio 54. Although I will say, Steve Rubel never separated families. He just had bouncers. Do you know what I mean? Ellis Island, would have looked like Studio 54. They would have had velvet ropes and, they would have had bouncers over there. They would have kept out the riffraff. This is a sick, sick administration. And they're only doing this because, it plays with Al-Qaeda. It plays with the base. It plays with Cult 45. It plays with the maggots. It plays with QAnon. This is the sickest thing I've ever heard. And this rule, this is an executive order. This is not legislation. They have no authority to do this, by the way. Just keep that in mind, because you're going to see a lot of freaking lawsuits about this, because this is talking about legal immigration. This is talking about green card holders who will not be able to renew their green cards unless they can pay first, last, and security, but they're not allowed to work here. You know what I'm saying? This is such a ridiculous catch-22. This is such a dumb thing. This is all because he needs something to sell to his base, to agitate, to make them hate. He needs to feed that beast of hate that he has created. He needs to feed the ninth circle of hell. This guy is dangerous. Doesn't anybody explain to him that this paranoid, crap that he peddles to his people is dangerous? Doesn't anybody say that to him? Doesn't anybody explain to him that as president of the United States, he speaks to the whole world on our behalf? Doesn't anybody tell him that his words have caused people to do heinous and ugly things like murder Mexicans in El Paso? Doesn't anybody tell him that this conspiracy theory that he peddled about Muslims dancing after 9/11 and that Muslims hate America and that Islam hates America? Doesn't anybody tell him that caused 3 men in Kansas, no less, to go and try and blow up a complex, a little apartment complex where Somali immigrants live? I mean, doesn't anybody explain to him, sir, you're causing death and carnage? Didn't he say something about the carnage ends here when he was being sworn in? Didn't he say that? This is so sick. I can't even tell you. I mean, the man peddles so much garbage, so much crap. It's just unbelievable, He said Ted Cruz was born in Canada, and so therefore he's not an American citizen. He couldn't run for president. He said that Marco Rubio was also ineligible to run for president because of where he was born, except Marco Rubio was born in the United States, and Donald Trump's mother was not born in the United States. He says global warming is a Chinese hoax. He said there was white genocide going on in South Africa that was being conducted by black South African farmers. He had Kellyanne Conway saying that on freaking Fox News. He said the Access Hollywood tape was fake. He said that wind farms cause cancer. He said asbestos is a ruse. It's that mesothelioma doesn't really happen. I mean, he says the media is fake. What else is he going to say? I mean, the guy is unhinged. I don't know when anybody would get serious about the 25th Amendment, but, his cabinet, they're all acting. They're all acting. They're thespians. Acting. I mean, this is so sick. And now they're going to go after legal immigrants. I mean, if you applied these kinds of rules to housing developments, you would probably be in violation of civil rights law. Oh, yeah. Okay, so at the dawn of his career, the government goes after Donald Trump and his freaking father for housing discrimination, and now he controls the government and he's using it to make the whole country practice discrimination. What a great plan for America. The big melting pot that we are, which is really more like a salad bar than it is a melting pot. Nobody wants to, mold and meld. Everybody wants to be the carrot, and I want to be the cucumber, and you want to be the lettuce. But you can't have anything without an onion. You can't. It's the flavor. But I mean, so now it's official. America has an income minimum. We have a cover charge. Now, I pulled an explainer. It's in the homework, RandiRhodes.com. The homework, it's absolutely free. You can just have it every day to learn. And the best explainer is the one that's in there today. There was one in there yesterday. It was pretty good. But the one that's in there today is unbelievable because it actually spells out who and that this is sort of fantastical in this respect. They're looking into the future. Ken Cuccinelli and Donald Trump and DHS, the whole government is going to be peering into the future. I mean, this couldn't be any worse if they were using a magic 8-ball, okay? This is just bizarro world. Not to see who gets welfare because immigrants are not entitled to and don't get welfare. No. So what they're doing is they're looking into the future to see who is likely to get any government services with a green card. They're looking into the freaking future. So you know what that means? That they're giving themselves the right to do, and this ought to send shockwaves into everybody's bloodstream. They're going to look at medical records of green card holders to see if any of them have chronic illnesses or if any of them have cancer or, any sort of diabetes, like a chronic illness like that, because or might be elderly or like 61 and over, because they want to see if those older immigrants are going to require long-term care. I swear to God, this explainer it's very specific and it's very easy to read. It's very understandable, but they are looking at, now, first, Congress has already barred most immigrants from using welfare. So that's not even a consideration, right? But they are going to consider prior use of anything. Even if when you applied for your green card, this is so sick. There's a thing called an application waiver, and some people, use it to not pay the application fee, and the government will grant you a waiver on the fee. If you had an application waiver, they're going to consider that prior government assistance, and they're going to try and deport you.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Well, I don't think it's fair to have the American taxpayer. It's about America first. I don't think it's fair to have the American taxpayer paying for people to come into the United States. So what we've done is institute what took place many, many years ago at our founding, virtually. But we are just reinstituting it, and I think it's long overdue. I am tired of seeing our taxpayer paying for people to come into the country and immediately go on to welfare and various other things. So I think we're doing it right.
He's a liar. You cannot, if you come into this, first of all, first of all, he's talking about legal immigration in this rule change. That's number one. Number two, immigrants that come into this country are barred from using welfare. So that is a lie. Everybody needs to know that is a lie. People are sick of, the taxpayers are sick of people coming into this country and getting on welfare. That does not happen. It's just like, this is crazy. So what we're talking about is legal immigration, green card holders. And here's what the public charge rule change says. It says any prior use of any government benefit, any at all. It expands the definition of common government benefits. So you're talking about federal housing subsidy or Section 8 housing assistance or non-emergency Medicaid benefits. Now, they are accepting children under the age of 21. They're accepting the kids, they're accepting the kids who get CHIP, okay, the Children's Health Insurance Program. But this is your public charge would be triggered if you had received any benefit from the government, any benefit at all, including the application fee waiver. Someone previously applied for an application fee waiver and they were given an application fee waiver for their green card. You could now be denied, a visa. And then they're going to take into account likely future use of any benefit. Okay, so here are the criteria that they are now going to be looking at. And by them, I mean DHS, okay? I mean Ken Cuccinelli. This is crazy. This is absolute sickness. This is legal immigration we're talking about, completely legal. The age of the applicant, the age of the green card holder, okay? You will be denied if you are younger than the minimum age for full-time employment, under 18. You will be denied if you are older than the minimum early retirement age for Social Security purposes, so that's 61. Or any age where your ability to work is impacted. They're also going to look at your health. I mean, this reminds me of like freaking slave auctions. What are they going to do? Put you on a stump and make you open your mouth to see how many cavities you have, or if your teeth are in good shape? This is sick. But yes, they're going to scrutinize, DHS is going to scrutinize any medical condition and assess whether or not this condition could affect your ability to work in this country. They're looking at your family size. If you have children or any dependents living in the United States with you, that could, increase the likelihood of a visa denial. They're going to look at your skills. I don't know what this, this fantastical fantasy about, high-skilled workers is, because if you only allow high-skilled workers, who's going to, butcher the chickens, who's going to butcher the meat? That I don't know. But also, this thing with high-skilled workers, won't that drive down the paychecks of high-skilled workers in this country? But yes, they're going to determine whether an applicant has, quote, adequate education and skills to either obtain or maintain employment. This is going to be applied across the board whether or not the green card holder is authorized to work. There are so many green card holders in this country who aren't authorized to work. They don't have work permits. They're not allowed to work. So if they work, they're breaking the law. And then they're going to scrutinize you for your ability to work, even if you don't have a work permit, and make sure that you have a financial, a status that they like. They're going to, I swear to God, but beyond looking at the applicant's income and assets, they're going to assess, check this out, your credit score, your credit history, any financial liabilities, plus whether or not the applicant has private health insurance or enough resources to cover any foreseeable medical costs. This is everybody, right? I mean, how are they going to predict that somebody, in between 18 and 61 doesn't have a foreseeable medical cost in their future? How are they going to see that? Okay. Now, even if the applicant has never used government benefits in the past and meets all of the above criteria to demonstrate low likelihood of using benefits in the future, they could still be blocked by an entirety Form I-944, not to be confused with Form I-864, which is called the Affidavit of Support. The Affidavit of Support is required for the person who is sponsoring you, like your husband or your wife, who has filled out that form, the I-864, that shows that he or she is able to provide at least $41,000 in change in income to support you. Okay, now you're going to have to show that you can support you, even if you are barred from working in the United States, by filling out Form I-864. If you don't have the ability to declare your self-sufficiency, you will be deported. You will not get a visa renewal. You will not get a green card renewal. And it doesn't matter if your sponsor can support. It doesn't matter if your sponsor is a billionaire. Okay, well, I guess it does, because you'll have the best lawyers. But it doesn't matter if your sponsor has already filled out the affidavit of support. Now you have to show that you are making 125% above the poverty line. So that's $41,150 for a couple with no children, $73,000 for a family of 5 or higher.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
The white supremacists think that Donald Trump is a white supremacist. So don't take a political candidate's comment, because that people don't really take a lot of credibility with what anybody says. I would just say, when you look at this kid in El Paso, he was saying similar things that President Trump has said about the invasion and all of this.
And all of this.
Yeah, I'm the least racist person there is in the world.
Okay, so here's who's affected by this new public charge rule expansion, which, by the way, DHS has zero authority to implement. And that is why there will be multiple lawsuits brought. But it applies to the vast majority of applicants for green cards, permanent residency. That's what a green card is, okay? Any family relationship to a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident. We're talking about 800,000 green cards that were granted in 2016 alone, because that's the latest, most fresh data that DHS has. That's the last year, 2016. So we know we're talking about at least 800,000 people. And then if you look at sponsorship by an employer, you're looking at another 140,000 green cards that were granted that year. So for just 2016 alone, you're looking at 1 million people. Also that he can be the racist, the chief racist in this country. This is crazy. This is sick, sad, and dangerous, as we all know from El Paso. It's dangerous to keep feeding this beast, this ignorant, dumbass beast that thinks somehow, they believe in this, replacement thing. This is just, the people that are exempted are refugees, asylees, and individuals who've experienced domestic violence. That's it. So there's this entirely new income standard, credit score standard. There's this entirely new standard that's going to be applied to legal immigrants. Legal. I can't stress that enough. In this country. Not just their sponsors, who also previously had to demonstrate their ability to support the legal visa, the legal green card holder. And now it sets the household income threshold as high as 250% of the federal poverty guidelines. Now, if you're married okay, and your spouse is a green card holder, I want you to know that half of all marriage green card applicants are going to be denied. That's 200,000 couples who are going to now have to face the future. They're going to look into the crystal ball, right? And they're going to have to decide whether they live, separately in two different countries now as they deport your spouse, or if you're going to leave the United States together. That's going to be a decision 200,000 couples are going to have to make. 56%, which is more than half of all family-based green card applicants, 56%, more than half will be denied under this public charge requirement. More than 47% of legal immigrants with green cards are going to be deemed likely risks based on your health, your age, your ability to show that you make 250% of the income poverty level, and also it's 71% of applicants from Mexico and Central America will be affected. 69% of green card holders from Africa, and 52% of green card holders from Asia, but only 36%, but still a third of people from Europe, Canada, and Oceania. Now, what's really interesting is the largest group of visa overstays in this here country, Canada. Yeah. Pasty white people from Canada wearing Speedos on my beach right now. Mm-hmm. Now, they're also saying that a permanent resident used to be only able to be deported within the first 5 years of obtaining your green card, and only if you became a public charge based on the circumstances that existed before you got your green card. For example, if you were a healthy person and you got a green card and then you got into an accident and then you needed to emergency Medicaid because you were in the hospital, you wouldn't have been deportable. But now you are. This rule is set to go into effect on October 15th of this year. Mike in Tampa.
Hey, Randy. I wanted to talk about this public charge.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a bunch of crap, basically. I'd like to see them use that on corporate America. Like the oil industry, they're a public charge. Look at climate change. Or the pharmaceutical industry, they're a public charge. And the opiate crisis. I mean, it's self-sufficiency crap. I don't know. They just want to make America only accessible to rich people.
Yeah, I mean, the unwashed masses, we're a problem for them. We really are. We're just a problem. We get sick. We want health insurance. We go to the hospital when people shoot us. Every single person who was injured in El Paso, every single person who was shot in El Paso, because if they didn't have their own private health insurance to cover the cost of putting them back together again, because Donald Trump actually, exacerbated, a racist to take deadly action against, immigrants, they're going to be deported on top. So this is why I say all of a sudden I understand the expression adding insult to injury. John in Minnesota.
I just wanted to say that Donald Trump's grandfather came here and would not meet those guidelines at all. And he begged to stay in this country because he left, I think it was Bavaria, to escape conscription. And, his mother also, it's kind of up in the air as to whether she was here legally also, although you can't really, I guess they can't really determine that one way or the other. But, he is just so hypocritical. And I think that what concerns me isn't so much what he does, but the fact that people love him, his base. They absolutely love him, and you can, stand on your head and, give them facts and, from dawn to nighttime, and they don't care. I mean, we have created a monster, really. It's just frightening. And he thinks that he can rule us by making executive orders like he's some kind of king when, as you pointed out, all this immigration law is very, very complicated, and how it's going to impact people, he could care less. I mean, it's just ignorance and stupidity on top of more ignorance and stupidity. And that's all I want to say.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, look, all he's trying to do is create fear and chaos, because when people are afraid and everything is chaotic, people can steal from you. And that is the desire. That is the goal. Okay?
Right.
This is all about the very, very, very wealthy.
Right.
Controlling everybody who isn't in that class of person.
But he throws the immigrants, especially black and brown people, as meat to his ignorant base who have been so propagandized by the media. I mean, he's a creation of the media himself. He's a little monster, and we need to get rid of him. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I'm all for it.
Well, I think Texas is in play this year, and that's that's 38 electoral votes, my friend, 38. So that's
I know. I think this is going to backfire in his face.
Well, it better, because I will say Mitch McConnell's Kentucky and West Virginia, these people are on public assistance for so long that they don't even consider it public assistance. So if he's going after legal people who are on public assistance, aren't they next?
Right.
Aren't they next? I mean, he's just going to say we can't afford welfare, we can't afford food stamps, we can't afford Medicaid, we can't afford everybody's going to lose what little bit they have, and these 1/3 of the people of the United States who support him, you can't worry about them. You're right, they're brainwashed, they're in for the rest of their lives. History will not judge them kindly. But when they lose their little bit of Social Security or disability checks, when they don't come anymore, they'll be sorry.
Oh, for God's sake.
I can't even believe that we're having this conversation. 5 years ago, the concept of even talking about this, even 3 years ago, of cutting off aid to Israel because of two people that hate Israel and hate Jewish people.
What?
I can't believe we're even having this conversation. Where has the Democratic Party gone? Where have they gone where they're defending these two people over the state of Israel? And I think any Jewish people that vote for a Democrat, I think it shows either a total lack of knowledge or great disloyalty.
Oh, for God's sake.
I'm going to try and stay very calm today as I discuss how the President of the United States has just placed a target on the backs of Jewish people. Yes, it's a difficult thing to have this moment. We had it yesterday. I was just livid. I was beside myself. But he doubled down today. All right, so this is never going to end. The President of the United States today was he was unusually unhinged, okay? He's always bizarre. He's always racist. He's always spiteful. He's always got the stench of white supremacy coming out of his mouth. But today was a particularly disgusting day, even by his standards. And every single person who covered this ridiculously off the hook, aimless, wandering, meandering, thoughtless, disgraceful diatribe by the president on the White House lawn today is saying he is all over the place. He makes no sense. I mean, it's like finally everybody, except for Fox News, understands that the emperor has no clothes. He is a stark, raving white supremacist, and he's burrowing in so deep with these people that nary a person in this country is safe. Obviously, African Americans have never been safe from violence and hatred and being followed around stores. I've been saying this for a really long time. We're all African American. We're all black now. Hispanic people are particularly hated by him. And instead of addressing the invasion that is in his head by dealing with 3 little countries. Oh, yeah, this man, he actually said this today. He's the chosen one. He said that. It came out of his mouth. He looked up to the heavens and said he's the chosen one today because he believes God has anointed him, a God he doesn't even believe in, has anointed him to take on China all by himself. You know, I got news for you. There is no reason why Americans have to take it in the shorts for this lunatic. That's what TPP, while it wasn't perfect and it wasn't completed and it's not done, TPP, just so you know, was all of the Asian countries joining together to exclude China, to teach them a lesson about stealing. That's what that was. But all of a sudden he comes along and anything Obama ever said, anything Obama ever did, anything Obama ever stood for, including democracy and the rule of law, he has to go completely 180 from. It's a very sick, twisted motivation. And, you know, for a really long time, people, have been operating under the guise of he's trying to make America white again. No, that's not really what he cares about. What Donald Trump cares about is Donald Trump. That's it. And everybody and anybody that disagrees with him or governed well or wants to govern well or thoughtfully or with the rule of law in mind or with care and consideration for children, they are to be targeted as objects in his way. This is literally about tearing this country limb from limb. This is about making this country attack itself. And the only place in the world that would root for something like this is Russia. This is how Russia wants to tear apart its biggest adversary. Donald Trump is doing everything he can to destroy farmers. Farmers, really? Farmers. Donald Trump is doing everything he can to destroy this economy, to destroy working people, to destroy health care for people, to destroy NATO, to destroy alliances that have served us well for 70 plus years, including with Israel. What you don't understand in all this, maybe you do, is that Benjamin Netanyahu is also a white nationalist. He is a lunatic, fringy, right-wing nationalist. He also doesn't believe in democracy. He also finds governing a bit too messy, and the relationship between the United States and Israel that's been bipartisan for 71 years, single-handedly, Netanyahu is destroying it. Destroying it, and I worry about that. And everybody in this world who cares about democracies should worry about that. That is what's being done here. And in order to do it, Donald Trump does it so cavalierly that he literally put a target on every Jewish back in this country. Every single one of us is now to be questioned about whether or not we're loyal. We're loyal. This is sick.
Joining me now is Congressman Ted Deutsch. He's a Democrat who serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Judiciary Committee. Sir, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Brianna.
I want to begin with something the president said. This was just incendiary what he said in the Oval Office today. He said, quote, "I think any Jewish people that vote for a Democrat, I think it shows either a total lack of knowledge or great disloyalty," end quote. What's your reaction?
It's outrageous. It's offensive. And it's dangerous.
Hello.
I don't know who the president is talking about Is he suggesting we're being disloyal to him? Is he suggesting that he knows what it means to be loyal to my religion? The president needs to stop dividing people. He needs to stop doing this, using this kind of rhetoric. Brianna, I went to the House floor in March, and I tried to explain to my colleagues what it means, what it has meant throughout the history of the Jewish people when charges of dual loyalty are leveled against Jews. Now, to find myself having to explain to the President of the United States what it means when someone suggests that the Jews are being disloyal and what that has meant to the Jewish community throughout history, it creates an environment that puts Jews at risk. The president should know that. It is outrageous. I condemn it. And frankly, everyone who cares about our democracy ought to condemn the president's words today as well.
Okay, so that was my neighboring Congressman, Ted Deutsch. He's actually been on this show. He's obviously an observant Jew, okay? He's trying to tell you how dangerous all of this is. Now, the Hispanic people in this country, they've known. African Americans, black people in this country, they've known. With all the anti-Semitism in this country now and people with arsenals and the rise of white supremacist groups, Jews know. When will the Trump pansies understand that this man is leading us into a race war? It's not even a civil war, South's gonna do it again kind of thing. This is a race war. For real.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com. All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power. The Randi Rhodes Show.
Well, what the president is doing is creating an environment in which anti-Semitism can flourish. When you start to use language like that, when you suggest that Jews are being disloyal to America or to him or whatever it is he meant, there's no valid reason to say that. But when you start using language like that, then the white nationalists hear it, and it sends them a signal that it's okay for them to use language that Jews are disloyal. That's what he does. And to do that when we're not that far removed from the deadliest attack on the Jewish community in American history, which happened in Pittsburgh, when a shooter went in, and it was a white nationalist shooter who went to that synagogue the week after they had a Sabbath service that was focused on immigrants and refugees. That's why he chose to attack Jews. And then you look at language that plays right into the hands of white nationalists. I've said it before, and I'm sorry to be so emotional about this, Brianna, but it needs to be condemned. The president needs to apologize to the Jewish community. He needs to apologize to everyone who is committed to a vibrant democracy with differences of opinion. Just because more than 3/4 of the Jewish community chose not to vote for President Trump is not reason for him to use the kind of language that winds up fueling the anger of white nationalists.
And it does. And that's the sad truth. There have been 27 arrests of people planning mass shootings since El Paso, since Dayton. El Paso happened, hours later Dayton happened, and then everybody forgets about Gilroy, California, and the Garlic Festival, which started the whole weekend of mass shootings, right? Now, there have been 27 arrests of people planning mass shootings. There was a guy, this is the sickest one, okay? There was a man in Seattle, a Nazi sympathizer in Seattle who threatened to butcher a Hispanic woman and boasted that President Trump would wipe out non-whites in a racial war and crusade. He was arrested, on charges of making threats. That was yesterday. Yesterday. His name's Eric Lynn, 35 years old. He sent out a barrage of really sick and gruesome Facebook messages to a woman in Miami saying, quote, this is in all caps, this is a race war and all of you will die. And then the next day he wrote to her. Now remember, he's 3,000 miles away from this woman, okay? And then the next day he wrote, you want to see what a real Nazi can do? I'm operating under the authority of Hitler. I thank God every day that President Donald John Trump is president and that he will launch a racial war and crusade. Almost every one of these 27 that were arrested were either saying that they were Nazis or saying that they were school shooters, and they were all white men, all of them, targeting their victims either because of their ethnic heritage, like the guy in the Walmart in El Paso. This guy decided he was going to target Mexicans. A man in Ohio, he decided he was going to target Jews. He was stockpiling weapons and ammunition. He was talking about the Oklahoma City bombing, 168 dead there, remember that? And he was going to go after a gay bar and a Planned Parenthood. Then you had a guy in Las Vegas who said he was going to attack a synagogue. He had bomb-making materials in his house, and he was communicating with white supremacists online. And then you had a man in Chicago who was going to, quote, slaughter and murder staff and visitors at an abortion clinic. He's a typical domestic terrorist. And then you had attacks by racially motivated violent extremists. And then you had, there's 27 different arrests. This guy that was targeting this woman in Miami over her Hispanic, name, he had 150 pages worth of hateful messages that she produced to the police. He called for the extermination of all Hispanics and other racial and ethnic groups, including Jews. He sent her a picture of himself wearing a shirt with a photo of Hitler on it. And then he decided he would tell her that he was going to kidnap her and he was going to injure her coworkers, and that he had asked an associate of hers to trick her into renting a house. And once she did, he would ambush her. And he told the police that he was going to pay the associate of this Hispanic woman $25,000 after she was ambushed in her house in the new rental that she was going to be, encouraged to do. And that he would go and ambush her and take her in chains back to Seattle. And he said the reason was because she hates white people. And it would be okay because he doesn't think Trump's FBI would care much about her. Trump was out on the White House lawn today, and he decided that after he called himself the chosen one, which he did.
I am the chosen one.
I am the chosen one. He decided that he would start going after Hispanics again. Today, as you might have heard, the Trump administration, ICE, has decided that unilaterally they will close the Flores Agreement loophole. The Flores Agreement, which was named after little Jenny Flores, a little 15-year-old girl who was from El Salvador, who was put in an adult prison with adult men when she was, years ago, and filed complaints. And so we now have the Flores Agreement that says that children will not be housed with adults, right? And that children must be put in the least restrictive setting possible, and that they must be tended to, and that they must be given toothbrushes and soap and things of this nature. That's the Flores Agreement. Donald Trump has said today that his ICE authority is that he's going to close the loophole in the Flores Amendment that requires children not be housed in adult prisons. He's going to he's decided to say that children can be housed in adult prisons indefinitely. Indefinitely. And that this is to take effect in 60 days. Now, the Flores Agreement also says that minors have to be in a state-licensed facility. So the way he's closing this loophole in his mind is he's going to say that that ICE itself can license any facility it chooses to hold families indefinitely, and that those facilities don't need to get state licenses anymore. And he thinks this is not going to be challenged in court because he's out of his mind.
Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.